our finances, the state of our public purse as South Africa. How much are we bringing in? Well, there's a bit of good news, it would seem. We're bringing in a bit more than was earlier anticipated. But needless to say, it's simply not enough to meet all our needs in terms of what we need to be spending on. So the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, in that context, will deliver his maiden budget speech at 2 p.m. The DA is hoping that social grants will be increased, while the education sector says schools, infrastructure and youth unemployment must be prioritized. To discuss this and discuss what we can expect, I'm joined now by eNCA business anchor Rofhiwa Madzena, who is live for us from Cape Town. Rofhiwa, so the statement made by Dondo Mokgajane, the Director General, in the budget review document last year rings true, really, that budgeting, all budgets are about balance. You are always balancing the present and the future, balancing various needs with limited resources. What are the expectations within that and this talk about a better than expected revenue collection performance, but the debt situation continues to be one that is a cause for serious concern?
Absolutely, Tulas, you raise a very important point there, that we did have a little bit of extra revenue collection, but you must bear in mind that this is just temporary. It was thanks to the commodity super cycle that the country experienced, and so the finance ministry, the entire department, had some maneuvering room in terms of a little bit of extra money to spend. But all super cycles come to an end, and at the end of the day, the ministry is going to have to find the funds to carry out the commitments that were made by President Cyril Ramaphosa at the State of the Nation address. Tulas, I've actually got with me Riza Omar from the Citizen Survey to talk a little bit more about those expectations around budget and really where we are as a society when it comes to the provision of basic necessities to South Africans. Thank you so much for your time this morning, actually. Let's start with those expectations. We were speaking offline earlier that what he should be prioritizing and what he's expected to prioritize are completely two different things.
That is correct. It is very difficult for government to solve the problem of unemployment. But that is the number one priority of the day, is finding a job. We've been not only hit by COVID, but the loss of jobs to the extent that there's downward social mobility. The upper middle income strata has fallen. A good section of them have fallen into the lower middle class, and the lower middle class has in turn fallen. So we started off with, before COVID, 16.5 million employed people, and now we're down to 14.2 million. In perspective, that is back to the level we last saw in 2013. Effectively, we have lost 10 years.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's a dire situation that you express here. And because you bring up COVID, the way in which government has been able to maneuver because of the pandemic with its limited resources, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, some of the things South Africans will remember. Many South Africans, well, we just paid for a R1 billion report from the Zondo Commission. And there has been estimates made that the cost of state capture was 1.5 trillion rand. Just to put 1.5 trillion rand into perspective, that's 120% of SARS full tax revenue collection for the year 2019, or enough money to pay the basic income grant for 5 years. That money was stolen. So one of the things that he should address, but it's unlikely that he will address, is how much money is National Treasury budgeting that we are going to get back from the money that was stolen. So a lot of the difficulties that are facing us now isn't only as a result of the pandemic, but there are other factors that have exacerbated the crisis.
Right, and obviously this crisis that we're now sitting in includes the suffering of ordinary South Africans who don't even have access to the basic necessities. So one wonders, how does the minister cater for those? I mean, we've spoken about the extension of the 350 Rand grant, which will go through March next year. But really, how does he maneuver that? And of course, he can't do so without sacrificing some other things, isn't it?
Well, that is correct. the crisis that we are currently facing, it may be there may not be a solution for this crisis. It's one of the few times in our history where we look forward and we go, there doesn't appear to be a solution. So one of the things that has been spoken about for the last 14 years of SONA is government's going to create jobs. I think at the high point, then President Zuma promised 5 million jobs. Well, in our research, we asked South Africans whether or not they believe those kinds of promises, and they don't. So where state promises that it's going to create jobs, it's unlikely. And that's just on the domestic front. There are a lot of other risk factors facing the South African economy, which maybe the minister will touch on, but these are things that are way outside of South Africa's scope of control.
No, absolutely. Something that's gone out of control, Ariza, is the state-owned entities and the added pressure they put on the country's fiscus. I mean, top of mind, we've got Eskom, we've got what's transpiring now with Denal. I mean, what do we do with them? And I know it's an age-old question, but they're still so relevant because an Eskom is just too big to fail, as has been said before, as an example.
Eskom is the utility upon which the entire economy and life in general rotates. Eskom, as the president called it, a sewer of corruption, has been compromised to the extent where the debt that Eskom has built up will be very difficult for Eskom to pay. So the way state has been dealing with this is by allowing Eskom's tariff increases to keep on climbing. When we spoke to people, however, a lot of people, especially amongst the urbanized workers and the rural poor, even now the middle class, are explaining to us that they can't afford electricity and that they run out of electricity. So by pushing up prices, all that's really happening there is people can't afford. If the economy were to grow, if manufacturing and factories were to be built, and load shedding were to be reinstated, which is very likely, it will make that investment relatively futile. So until they find an answer for Eskom, and a comprehensive answer at that, we don't know what the answer is. That is for state to determine. But whatever they do decide, pushing up electricity prices further is going to hurt South Africans even more.
No, absolutely. And of course, we are expecting the regulator, NERSA, to be making an announcement this Thursday about that very increase around electricity prices in the country at the moment. And really, Tulas, Riza perfectly puts it in that it's just added pressure on South African citizens. Business as well. You know, these are two basic incentives, water and electricity, that a business would need to be incentivized to come and do business and create jobs in South Africa. But our government has made it very difficult for many for a long time now. So let's see what the minister is going to be saying today and whether these budgetary implementations will be put into place in the best way possible when he makes his speech a little bit later on. For now, Tulas, it's back to you. Devon Morrigan will be taking over reporting on the after thoughts of the budget speech.
All right, I've got to thank you for that. That's eNCA's Rofhiwa Madzena outside Parliament there ahead of the budget speech to be delivered by the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana. And that's coming up at 2 p.m. So much to talk about, so many angles from which you can attack and basically have a go at this particular budget, because there are so many realities that are being brought to bear, that are coming to fruition at this very moment and in the years to come as the budget is being drafted and being delivered. The situation is constantly changing.